Hey, how's it going? It's Ross, and I'm wearing this funny hat and I'm all sweaty because I'm recording this at summer camp. It isn't a summer camp for me. I'm just kind of hanging out and helping to run the archery range and teach some other stuff. So we're having a pretty good time. Anyway, about ADHD. So it's really hard for us to do anything that's boring when we have ADHD. Why? Because boredom is really the ADHD kryptonite. In fact, we will do absolutely anything other than the thing that's boring, even though we know that that's exactly the thing that we should be doing. In our last video, I said that we were going to engineer the crap out of ADHD, and that's exactly what we're going to do on this channel. We're going to take real engineering principles that I learned during my career at NASA Johnson Space Center, and we're going to apply them to ADHD problems. So how can engineering help with something like ADHD? Well, the principle that we're going to talk about today is going to be loving the problem. Now I know what you're thinking. Engineers are probably not the romantic type. And maybe you'd be right. There's some evidence for that. But we're going to work with what we have. So the problem that most engineers fall into is they love their solution. They come up with something and they say, hey, check out the thing that I made that does whatever. They're invested in their solution. And so when the solution doesn't work quite right, they apply a Band-Aid in their design. And they do that over and over and over, and more Band-Aids and more Band-Aids and more Band-Aids, when what they really need to do is go back and change the basis of their design to begin with. But they're not going to do that because they're so invested. They love their solution. But what we want to do is we want to fall in love with the problem. We want to investigate the problem. We want to find out everything that there is about the problem. We want to become obsessed with the problem to the points so that coming up with a solution is a natural result. A good example of this is the book Ender's Game. So in Ender's Game, there's humanity, they're fighting a war with evil aliens or whatever. And so as a last-ditch effort, humanity decides to conscript a whole bunch of child geniuses into the military to turn them into strategists and generals and such. So Ender is the hero of this story. And Ender basically comes to know his alien enemies so well that he loves them. And I won't spoil the end of the book for you. So we're not trying to save humanity from aliens. But what we are trying to do is, as ADHDers, we're trying to thrive in a world that wasn't built for us. That's a bit of a problem. So we have to go back to that principle of loving the problem, right? Let's find out everything we can about this, and then we will come up with a natural and easy solution. So back to our question. Why is it so hard for people with ADHD to do things that are boring? It has to do with dopamine. Lots of people get dopamine wrong. They think dopamine is the pleasure-seeking hormone. That's not really what it is. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, hangs around in our brain. It's all about seeking. Sometimes it's seeking pleasure. Sometimes it's avoiding painful experiences. But dopamine works in both. It's just about the seeking, right? So dopamine turns into adrenaline, which our body needs to basically just move. So we have a desire for something, we're seeking it, we have the dopamine, and now our body can move in order to get the thing that we're seeking. So back in the day, in ancient history or whatever, we were the craftsmen, the warriors, the explorers, the people who went out and did stuff, the people who took risks, the people who sought after things. Modern life is doing us a massive disservice because a lot of us don't have the ability to follow those kinds of pursuits. And so instead, we end up chasing or seeking after quick dopamine hits. Things like sugar, chocolate, video games, thrills, illicit drugs, alcohol, tobacco. There's all sorts of things that we can get into. In fact, as ADHDers, we are more prone to having addictions than other people because of this state of low dopamine. So that's a real problem, especially in the modern world for us. So that brings us back to trying to figure out dopamine in and of itself and dealing with doing boring things. If you're not seeking the thing, right, the dopamine is going to be low. You have no interest in it, therefore you have very little dopamine. I referred to this in the last video as the wall of awful. It's that wall, the barrier that you have to climb or cross over somehow in order to get started on a task that you really are trying to avoid. So, no dopamine, very difficult to move and climb over that wall of awful. It's essentially a state of low dopamine. So if we can find a way to seek that task, getting that task completed, then we're in a position where we have dopamine and we can get it done. It's a lot like archery. If we use our bicep to draw the bow, then it's much more difficult and things don't line up and it's a lot harder to make the shot. However, now that we've loved the problem and we've explored it thoroughly and we really know it, now what we can do is we will naturally come to a solution. Then what that looks like, at least in terms of archery, is we can engage our back muscles, which are much stronger than our biceps, easily line up everything for the shot. So what are our metaphorical back muscles for ADHD? I'd be interested in what you have to say about that. Put it in the comments. Let's have a discussion on that. For me, the ADHD brain is not priority-based. It's interest and excitement-based. And therefore, if we steer towards the things that light us up, the things that we're excited about, we can use that to leverage our strengths, our metaphorical back muscles. So I use an acronym called NICU. We love our acronyms at NASA. We have acronyms for everything. So NICU, think of it like the baby intensive care unit at the hospital, NICU. And it stands for novelty, interest, challenge, and urgency. Novelty, interest, challenge, urgency. If we can take any one of those things and incorporate it into the task we're trying to do, we have a much better and easier chance of overcoming that wall of awful, of incorporating dopamine into the task that we're trying to fulfill, even if the task itself is boring. What I mean is, we can modify the task using one or more of these four things: novelty, interest, challenge, urgency. So let's talk about them a little bit. Novelty just means anything new. So something I like to do to add novelty to a task is I move to a different location that I normally don't work in. That can be anything from a different room in your house to a different place in your office. You could go to a cafe. I know people who have rented out Airbnbs or some other rental place and go and work there for the weekend. It adds that bit of novelty. Other things you can do: use a program you don't normally use on your computer. Use that to complete your task. You could write a report out completely by hand and then type it into the computer. Anything that you can do to add something novel to the task will most likely help. The next one is interest. Adding interest to a task. This can be something like watching a YouTube video while you're folding the laundry. Or you could change the orientation on your monitor so your screen is upside down. Anything that you can do to add that interest, to spice things up a little bit. The next one is challenge. Challenge, you could do something like writing an email, start with your last sentence and work backwards. You could only use metaphors involving cheese. There's a million different things you can do to create challenge in something. We'll talk about another one in just a second. The last one is urgency. Urgency is something that a lot of ADHDers have stumbled across in their life and use, but in a non-healthy way. And what I'm referring to is procrastination. A lot of us have discovered that if we procrastinate, which is usually not by choice, usually it's because we can't get past the wall of awful, we procrastinate and we procrastinate until we build up enough of a sense of urgency so that the dopamine levels are high enough. When that happens, then we can start the task. We can climb up over that wall of awful. We can start to get things done. The problem with procrastination is it adds a ton of stress that's not healthy for you. So what we need to do is we need to figure out a way to use urgency without the harmful stress of procrastination. Here's something that I've used in the past. I've used this idea of a timer. It doesn't have to be a Pomodoro, but we're including it with a list. So this is a little bit of a different twist on it. So get out a list, piece of paper, something like that. Take the task you're trying to do, write down every step of that task. Break it down into the smallest parts that you can think of. And then what you're going to do is you're going to set a timer. It can be however long you want. Generally 25 minutes is a good place to start, but it doesn't have to be 25 minutes. Whatever you want to start with. Start the timer and then complete as many of those tasks on that list as you can before the timer's done. If you don't complete very many, it's not the end of the world, but you're racing against yourself. So you're using urgency, but remember how I talked about we pull challenge back in? We're pulling challenge back in. So we're using that sense of urgency, but as soon as we're done with that 25 minutes, count up the number of tasks that you've completed, mark it as a personal best, take a 5-minute break, come back, then write the next list of tasks. Set the timer, go. Complete as many tasks as you can and try and beat your personal best. I have found that if I take NICU and I incorporate as many of those elements of NICU as I can, it is very, very helpful in order for me to create that dopamine so that I can get over the wall of awful. So everyone's ADHD symptoms are different. But thankfully, we can take something like NICU and we can combine it and use multiple things in NICU at the same time, like we talked about before. This is really advantageous. So my invitation to you is to take some of those things, combine them, experiment with them, see what happens. We'll talk more about experimenting in another video. But for now, I'd love it if you would post your struggles and your successes in the comments below. And that's something that we can all go through and read and learn and share together. So I appreciate you spending some time with me today, even though I'm sweaty and wearing this goofy hat. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video, where we engineer the crap out of ADHD.